Hi, I'm Mr. Hoover, and in this video we're going to talk about exercise 2b, where we have to state sine, cosine, and tangent of pi over 6. Well, you can't find 5 pi over 6 here, okay? But you can find pi over 6, which is 30 degrees. Well, that's quite obvious. Look, pi corresponds to 180 degrees. Half a turn is 180 degrees. So pi over 6 corresponds to 30 degrees. So 5 pi over 6 corresponds to 150 degrees. So what you want is sine of 5 pi over 6. So for that, we're going to have a unit circle. Here, a unit circle. It's important that you are able to do this using a hand sketch. And 30 degrees is more or less something like 150 degrees is something like this. Okay, so this will be 30 degrees. So this is the arc length we're talking about. Okay, this is 5 pi over 6. And this is 150 degrees. These two correspond. Okay, you can either talk about the arc length 5 pi over 6 in a circle with radius 1, or about 150 degrees. So this is in fact what you want. This is sine and this is cosine. Okay, well, as you cannot read it off your table, you have to find a value that you can find. Look, as this is 30 degrees, this arc length is pi thirds. Now look, you can find pi thirds on here. Sine of pi thirds. Sine of pi thirds is, no, sorry, pi over 6. Sorry, that's why I was confused. This is pi over 6, 30 degrees. I'm sorry, pi over 6. So sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. Look, that's about right. It's 1/2 pi over 6. So the sine value is 1/2. So let's try that with our calculator. Sine, make sure that you have your r there, 5 times pi over 6. Here we go. No, we don't. Let's get rid of this. Now let's close the brackets. It's 1/2. You see, I'm even faster doing it mentally than doing it with my calculator. So this is 5 pi over 6. This is pi over 6 because when you add them together, it's 180 degrees. And you see this sine value is 1/2 because it's in the second quadrant, in the top half of your 4 quadrants. It's above the x-axis, so it must be in the positive. So now let's talk about cosine here. This value here. Well, you can find this on here. Cosine of pi over 6 is the square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of 5 pi over 6 is in fact more or less the same thing as cosine of pi over 6, but now look, it's in the second quadrant here. This is in the second quadrant. That means this length here, or this value here, is negative. So it's minus the square root of 3 over 2. Let's check whether that's all right. Maybe we can do it like this. Yes, we can. So here we go. Cosine of 5 pi over 6. Look, it's minus the square root of 3 over 2. So you can use the table, but not directly. You have to know that it's more or less like a 30-degree angle or pi over 6 in the radian measure. But well, as it is in the second quadrant, this line segment or this point is in the negative, and it means it's minus the square root of 3 over 2. Now the tangent of 5 pi over 6. Now look, for that you have to introduce the tangent to the circle, and you have to continue this line. And this will be your tangent, okay? So look, it's like an angle of 30 degrees here, or here, 30 degrees, or pi over 6 in the radian measure. Look here, pi over 6, the tangent is the square root of 3 over 3, but you can see it's below the x-axis, so the y value is negative, so it's minus the square root of 3 over 3. Look, let's do this again with the tangent now. It's minus the square root of 3 over 3. I hope it wasn't too difficult. See you on the next one.